This week on Head to Head, the Rise of Skywalker plot.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So, pretty soon, I think November maybe, is when we're going to see the release of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay.
So, first of all, I mean, we brought this up a little bit before, when we were talking about, actually, Star Wars Celebration, I think, is the last time we talked about this game. But it seems like this game might either foreshadow some events that could happen in Episode 9 or could, maybe loosely tie into some of the concepts. So, given that there might be some definite canon stuff in here, how excited are you now to play this game?
It's been a while since I actually played a Star Wars game.
That's right. You never actually played Battlefront 2, did you?
Mm-mm. So it's been a while. But I'm curious as to see what the storyline is for this particular, or how the storyline plays out, I should say.
Yeah, because, right, we
I know the story.
For you guys that don't know, it's basically like Order 66 happened, and you got this Jedi. I don't know, is he a Padawan, or is he just like a...
I think he's a Padawan.
Yeah, I thought so, too. I thought he was a Padawan. Or if he is, he's relatively
purge,
new.
Basically.
Yeah, he's basically trying to escape the purge, and so he has to go about his business and do a bunch of stuff, but he can't. He ends up in all these situations, and he can't necessarily openly use the Force. And that's actually part of playing the game, is that you have to try to accomplish various tasks or quests or whatever.
Without drawing.
Yeah, without drawing too much attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually fairly excited about this. I have to say that at first, I really wanted more of an RPG-style game.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that, I don't know, this game kind of has that.
I would say it kind of has a little bit hints of Knights of the Old Republic, in the sense of what you do may affect how, meaning like if you use the Force, it's going to cause more problems for you versus when you don't. But then, how do you justify using the Force or using any type of Jedi, like even like igniting a lightsaber or something like that?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it has ramifications.
Well, there's definitely strategy involved.
Yeah, I mean, and that's...
and again, I'm a big fan of the Call of Duty series. In fact, recently, a couple of weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, they actually had the alpha for Modern Warfare.
I was about to say, they just had that come out, right?
Yeah. And then this past weekend, they did the beta. So... and I've been playing these, and it's amazing, and I love the Call of Duty series. So it's, and I mean, that's not exactly an RPG by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm not saying that, that it has to be an RPG style game or I don't like it, because I'm really fond of Battlefront 2. Like I said, if you guys haven't played Battlefront 2, it is worth playing. Yes, it had some initial issues. There was this whole thing about how they were charging extra money for stuff and whatever, but it really is worth it, and you can usually find that game on sale. Jedi Fallen Order comes out November 15th? Yeah, November 15th. Because it's like 3 days. I judge everything on The Mandalorian. Which, speaking of which, let's get to the Cantina. And
let's grab some drinks, man. We got stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we got stuff to talk about.
All right, so...
Speaking of the Mandalorian.
Right, speaking of the Jinx. No.
Kind of a nice... That was actually an unintentional segue, by the way.
But yeah, speaking of the Mandalorian, and the new series is going to supposedly address the origin of the First Order. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm actually really huge on this news, because one of the things that I enjoyed about The Force Awakens, but at the same time, it bothered me a little bit. I mean, not in a way like I thought it was bad or anything. It bothered me in the natural way that it would, is that kind of the way that you were when, once again, how they're always accusing The Force Awakens of being somewhat derivative of A New Hope?
Right.
I kind of felt the same way, because you're just dropped in the middle of this conflict, and you're like, where did this come from? And it was worse because at least with A New Hope, you're dropped in the middle of this universe. The whole universe is new to you. Mm-hmm. Okay, but now we've lived in this world for a long time.
Yeah, over 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so, you get this thing where you're dropped into episode 7 now, and it's like, oh, it's not the Empire and the Rebellion, it's the First Order and the Resistance. But yet it contains some characters that we knew from each side. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, how did that happen? Mm-hmm. Because there's this whole 30-year gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. It always bothered me in a way, not in a bad way, but just as a fan, like, I really want to know how this First Order thing came to be. Mm-hmm. Especially because I've been writing a bunch of novels, that are essentially all around it.
Right.
Where you had some stuff, this happened like maybe, 10 years before or, 6 years after or whatever it is. And then, of course, they're spending a lot of time between 3 and 4 and, maybe just after 6 or whatever. But it's like, how did this come to be? And to find out that The Mandalorian is actually going to explain some of this stuff, because as we all know, it takes place like
pretty much right after.
Yeah, pretty much right after. I don't remember. Did they say how many years?
I think it's maybe like maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
After the fall. I mean, because it's got to be like pretty much like after everything's blown up and everybody's just kind of scattered across, and you still got people still trying to hold on. So, yeah, it's probably within probably the first year or two.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it's the perfect series. It's the perfect vehicle in which to explain this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for it because, especially with this whole, and we talked about it last week with the whole, the Age of Resistance comic that's coming out.
Right, with
Snoke's origin. So that's going to glean a lot of information as far as the First Order, hopefully. And then, of course, now we actually get to see and hear it, in The Mandalorian, hopefully. And I'm curious to see how much of it is going to be put into it, though.
Well, there's that. So there's how much are we going to see? But then the other thing you have to think about is like, okay, Kylo Ren became Kylo Ren only 6 years before The Force Awakens? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is obviously implying that the First Order actually came to be before Kylo Ren, and maybe even well before Snoke.
Maybe.
So it's kind of like if they're going to deal with the origins of the First Order, are we going to see Snoke?
Well, yeah, I mean, you kind of have to wonder, how did he become Supreme Leader?
Yeah. How did he become Supreme Leader? And if he was, and let's just say Snoke was maybe 10 or 15 years before The Force Awakens, that still leaves a good 15-year chunk, between that and Return of the Jedi. So it's like, well, then who was the first leader of the First Order? And
who started, who got it? How did you even get everybody to get on board with this?
Right, because, you're assuming that, okay, the Emperor dies, this Snoke guy comes on. Well, is there a guy before Snoke? And if so, what happened to him?
Well, yeah, I mean, you really have to think about it because it's, like you said, okay, if everything takes place, let's say a year or two after the events of Return of the Jedi, okay, and the First Order is going to be explained, or the origins of the First Order. And maybe we don't see, maybe there's just talks about it. Maybe there's just conversation.
Right. What it kind of reminds me of is, you remember how in the prequel trilogy they talked about, hey, we don't like what's going on. And it's like they're sowing the seeds of the rebellion and they're starting to have little meetings and.
Yeah, even though the whole, which I did love this about the prequels, is that, it was kind of like a systematic thing where you kind of saw Palpatine, once again, playing chess, kind of setting the pieces in motion. And then by the time we get to Attack of the Clones, I love that scene where it's just like, okay, take this and hide this because we don't want them to know what we're building, what we're doing over here. And then you see what it is. It's like the plans to the Death Star. And you're just like, whoa, okay, cool. So now it's like...
Yeah, like it's kind of like, okay, they're planning that. And then I didn't even think about that.
And then at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you see them on the bridge of the Death Star. So you're just kind of like... you see them on the bridge of a Star Destroyer looking at the framework,
yeah.
Yeah, the framework of the Death Star. And so you're like... Okay, so, and I'm thinking like that's probably what's going to happen with Mandalorian.
Well, it's either that or like I was saying too, with the whole rebellion, Bail Organa, they're starting to meet in secret. They're starting to form like kind of a coalition. Mm-hmm. And this is the beginnings. These are the architects of the rebellion. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Rogue One is where we see them truly come into their own as the rebellion. But it could be something like that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And actually, honestly, that's far more likely, where it's really more or less like sowing the seeds versus like
gathering everything.
Yeah. Because, it would make sense. At some point, the First Order has to be born out of the ashes of the Empire. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that transition takes place.
Now, see, I would really love to see a series like that that's called First Order. And it's just basically talking about like, okay, we kind of saw the seeds in Mandalorian. But now we have a whole show about, okay, the establishment of it, okay, where are we going to get these ships from? Who's funding all this stuff? How are we going to, create? How different is it going to be from the Empire? It looks familiar to the Empire, but did they make any modifications because they realized this didn't work?
They could actually, they could go in a lot of different directions, and that could be a very unique series.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do that. If anything, I think it would just be continued like more comics or novels.
Because that'd be a really good political war type, like a political kind of thriller almost.
Yeah.
Almost like our
It would, but they could also do the similar thing. Like another cool way they could do it is like, okay, you see like the beginnings of it in The Mandalorian. Maybe in some of these other series that they come out with, obviously not Cassian or Obi-Wan, it wouldn't. Those timelines don't fit. Yeah, but if they do like future series that are post Return of the Jedi, pre-Force Awakens series, they could give you bits and pieces. So when you watch all these series together, that's what gives you the full picture of how the First Order was formed.
That's true.
They could do something like that too. And either way, it would be cool.
Indeed.
But speaking of the comics.
Yes. So
this is
what was it, a couple of weeks ago? We actually watched it again because it was just hilarious. we were talking about it so much that we just eventually had to watch it again.
We addressed it on the show as far as he's canon now, but now we're talking a little bit more about the actual comics. So why don't you give our dear listeners let them in on the conversation here.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Saturday Night Live had a sketch on with Adam Driver. Adam Driver, who plays Kylo Ren, and they did this whole sketch about the whole undercover boss thing. And so they had him as the undercover boss on one of the Star Destroyers. And he was a radar technician named Matt. So if you get a chance, check it out on YouTube. It's hilarious. It's called, just look up my Matt, the radar technician, and it'll pop up. But what makes this hilarious is that he actually gets referenced. There's actually 2 references of Matt, the radar technician in a new comic book series that's coming out.
Yeah, what is the comic book series? Because I don't think we ever actually mentioned that. I think we talked a couple of weeks ago about how he's actually canon now. Mm-hmm. Which, that didn't surprise me because he actually popped up in Battlefront 2. He's a playable character in Battlefront 2.
Yeah. Actually, it's in the new comic book series we were just talking about last week.
Oh, the
Age of Resistance.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, basically, General Hux, I guess, and Kylo find himself in like a sabotage ship or something like that. After surviving a crash, Hux sets out exacting revenge on those who he feels responsible for the accident. An admiral who bullied him as a child and a radar technician. So, yeah, that's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, because then it makes you wonder because, I mean, according to the sketch, it was basically Kylo Ren pretending to be this guy. So it's kind of like, are they actually saying that Kylo went undercover and invented this, this guy? I mean...
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we have to just pick up the comic and check it out for ourselves and kind of
or you know what it probably is. It's probably just like kind of a sly reference.
Yeah, it's like a radar technician that he might oddly look like Kylo, but just kind of as a joke.
I just think it's funny how that little skit because they've had different skits before. I mean. Look, Robot Chicken has some of the most hilarious.
Oh my goodness, man! That stuff is just priceless to me.
Stuff, and then other comedy shows and other things like that. But that one sketch that Saturday Night Live did actually has so much life, and I mean, it's lived well beyond that. To where everybody loves Matt the radar technician.
Yeah, and it's funny because you just never know what's going to catch. But I mean, the whole character of is like Kylo trying not to be Kylo. But he's obviously Kylo because he's just so irritating. I said, hey, you guys want to see his lightsaber? He just comes back around the corner with it. I mean, it's just like Kylo would just leave that just laying around somewhere. I mean, that's what makes it so hilarious.
Yeah, Adam Driver basically played that so well because it really was, this is how Kylo would be if you were doing that.
But the best thing, you and I were just basically in tears watching was that whole card that he gave the guy sorry for killing you.
Or when because when he was doing that little interview and he was like, I felt really bad about his son, especially since I'm the one that killed him.
Yeah. And then he gives him this whole handwritten card.
Sorry for killing your son.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, that's great. But definitely, there are many reasons to check out this Age of Resistance comic, but I mean, come on. You got to give it to anybody that does anything on Matt the Radar Technician. And if you have a chance, pick up Battlefront 2 and definitely try to play him. I got the chance to play as Matt the Radar Technician, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's awesome. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so we kind of briefly talked about this last.
We talked about a lot of stuff last week.
But 3PO is playing a big role in The Rise of Skywalker.
Well, that kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week, and now we can really start to speculate a little bit more on what that could be, because before we were just talking about why his eyes were red. Mm-hmm. And what that might mean for the character, but we never really put that in the context of the film.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we kind of had those, speculation, especially the whole battle mode thing.
Yeah,
that's cool,
and that's still what I'm leaning toward. I'm leaning toward that.
Yeah, but
the question is, if that's what it is, why? What situation do you think that they would want to put 3PO of all? I was going to say of all people, but I mean of all droids in battle mode.
Well, I mean, to put him in battle mode, I mean, I have no clue. I mean, first of all, let's just talk about why would a protocol droid even have a battle mode? I mean,
that is a good point, actually.
You know what I mean? It's what do you RoboCop all of a sudden? It's just you're a protocol droid.
Look, it's one of those things. I know, but think about this, right? R2-D2 is a fairly normal droid. But then in the prequels, we see he's got jet propulsion. He's got all these things. And you're kind of okay, man.
But that makes sense because all in the purview of what he is. I mean, he's an astromech droid, so he's going to have tools that he's going to need to fix stuff or reach certain things, in order to do his job. It just so happens he uses them as weapons.
Well, but, I mean it's not even that makes
that makes more sense to me that he has all this stuff on him, oil slick, or the little arm that comes out, or the little prongs that he was zapping the Ewoks with. I know,
but it just, to me, that's just kind of retrofitting. It's and they try to explain it by it all malfunctioned or something like that. But it's come on, at the end of A New Hope, he was basically put together brand new. Mm-hmm. And of course they could say something well, we don't want our astromech droids to have all this stuff. But again, let's just call it what it is. It's retconning the whole thing to explain the fact that Lucas didn't have the technology to give R2-D2 jet propulsion in the original trilogy.
Yeah. But I mean, like the fact that, him being an astromech droid and having those tools in his tool belt, I guess, or compartments, it makes sense that he has them. But for a protocol droid, like, okay, you're primarily dealing with customs and, welcoming dignitaries and, in their language because you don't want to mess up and be disrespectful. Actually, Star Trek actually did a really good thing on that. Granted, it wasn't like when he went. Shh. Oh yeah, sorry, but yeah, it's cool, and I think
that other series.
Yes. However, I mean, can you really picture? I mean, 3PO doesn't even have like his arms don't even like. What kind of battle can he do? Like his arms doesn't even.
Yeah.
Bend. So.
I mean, I
mean,
know.
Granted, that was in the Attack of the Clones, it was just his head on the battle droid. So that,
See, and that's basically, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is it's almost somewhat...
Like, do they put him on a new body or something that's actually equipped for that? Then that would be cool.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, and it might not even necessarily be... It might not necessarily be a thing to where it's a thing that they put in protocol droids. It could be just like a reprogramming. You know what I mean? It's kind of like...
But I just don't look at his, his body being able to really do anything because it's not designed for that.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that too, where it's somewhat like... You can understand like certain types of droids they could probably reprogram to be battle droids, but it's kind of like you said. I mean, when you look at what is traditionally considered a battle droid, you have droidicas, you have the typical Roger battle droids. You have those. Oh man, what were they? They're those ones with the wrist guns.
Oh yeah,
they're kind of like I forgot what they were called. I forget a lot of things. It's kind of like we really are Star Wars fans here.
But you know what, though? I mean, with 3PO, and Anthony Daniels is talking about, his role in this. He's going to have a very big central part of this story, which makes sense. It's kind of weird because he had his mind erased, but I'm guessing they're saying that some things weren't erased.
Well, that brings up the question. It's kind of like, okay, we see that C-3PO has this big role in Rise of Skywalker. The question becomes why. It goes into the whole thing of if the red eyes and this whole thing really does mean a battle mode, why? Surely there are other, droids that would be far more suited for that than 3PO. So that makes sense. If there's something that he contains or something, but it really is hard to even speculate on why would he... I mean, other than the fact that that's what fans actually want. I've always wanted 3PO, especially because in the sequel trilogy, he's barely been seen.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's moving to the forefront, because if he's going to finally... Because it's basically going to... It sounds like, he's going to meet a demise in this, which is going to be very hard because it's like,
Yeah, I know. Anthony Daniels is the only Star Wars actor who's been in like everything. And
I think, because he was around, like I said, unless he had some sort of, maybe they might find he had a backup drive or something. I don't know. But I mean, I just feel like because he's been around throughout the whole saga,
look, they're advanced in technology. They should know that redundancy is definitely the way to go with hard drives.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, you're right. He's been around through the whole saga. Now, R2 has been the one who's never had his memory erased, so theoretically he should know, which is why when, he pops up on Dagobah, he shouldn't recognize Yoda immediately. And maybe he does.
Yeah. But maybe 3PO, gets some information from R2 or whatever, and then he tells everybody else about it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of a scenario where 3PO would play a major role.
Well, I mean, like I said, he's one of the gatekeepers, though. I mean, like, he's like, with him being around, if they found a way to like either restore his memory or they found some sort of chip or whatever that has a bunch, that could be very possible, because then now you got somebody who's around for the entire thing and who can actually talk about it.
Right.
I mean, he's the only droid that talks, so.
Well, English. I mean, R2 does talk.
Well, yes.
I mean, granted, to us, it's more like chirping and stuff like that. But look at BB-8, right? You can understand him.
Yeah, I mean.
You know, it's like a language. But the point is, and this is a fact that we can't overlook, is that Anakin actually built 3PO. Mm-hmm. So there might be some connection there. Some
fail-safes he built into him.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, who knows? Maybe that's where the battle mode came from.
Maybe. But
again, I mean, there is a precedent for it, because like I said, in that Vader Afra comic, I mentioned that last week, there is a precedent for that model droid to actually have, to where that's one of their functions, is torture and killing and...
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to wait to Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, we'll have to wait. But in the meantime, feel free to join us in our speculation at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and let us know, what major role do you guys think 3PO could possibly play in the Rise of Skywalker? And with that, I think it's time to finish up our drinks and leave the cantina.
Yes, sir.
And move on to our next segment. What do we got next?
We have Duel of the Fates. All right, so this week we have the battle between, which was the better movie, The Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi?
Well, the interesting thing about it is, like, which is the better movie versus people's favorite. Because the thing that's funny about it is that these are the two movies that a lot of people go back and forth on.
Yeah.
Like, they usually cite one of these two as their number one. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I'm going to take Empire Strikes Back, but not because it's my favorite one. Mm-hmm. It is the more well-done movie, and it's pretty much recognized as such. Even people that favor Return of the Jedi will generally admit that, you know, Empire is, you know, kind of the best one, but they like Return of the Jedi better, and they usually cite the reasons for it is the whole Emperor thing, you know, whether it's the duel or just the fact that you get to know the Emperor more. Mm-hmm. You know, they like the way the movie flows better. They just like the elements of the movie better. But, you know, Empire Strikes Back is widely regarded as the best sequel pretty much ever made. You know, everything. And hey, this is a good time to plug the thing. At the end of September, if you guys live in the Detroit area, I already have my ticket. I don't know if you guys remember or not, but I don't know. When was it? Like last?
It was this past spring, wasn't it?
No, because you had your accident. That's why you couldn't go. So it was last fall.
Right, but I thought it was... Okay.
No. It was probably about a year...
From now.
Yeah, a year ago. Like probably like November, I want to say. But... last year, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra actually did the music of A New Hope. But what they did was they ran the movie and they just took out the music soundtrack and the orchestra performed the music live, which is incredible.
And this is what I had to ask you, but did they actually keep the dialogue from the movie? So it's basically you're watching the movie You're
basically watching the movie with a live orchestra.
Sweet.
So instead of like the
soundtrack,
the soundtrack being in there, it's the orchestra playing the music, but the dialogue, everything is in there. It's the full movie.
Sweet.
Now they're doing that with The Empire Strikes Back. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be on September 27th. And I think also the 28th.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 days.
Yeah, it's like 2 days. I had to get my ticket for it because I was so blown away by the experience of, you know, The New Hope. And you really get more of an appreciation for the music.
Because you hear all the little...
Because you just hear, you just hear every little nuance. And, you know, you still hear all the sound effects and dialogue and everything, but... because they mix it really well. But, you know, you do get... things actually stick out to you more because you're hearing the music live. So that that was my plug for that. But I bring that up because the music of The Empire Strikes Back is arguably the best
most iconic.
Yeah,
that's the most iconic. I mean, Leia's theme, the Imperial March.
Yeah, I mean it's. I mean,
the Han and Leia.
Yep, the Han and Leia love theme.
Yep.
Imperial March. I mean, just the whole asteroid.
Yeah.
Field music and that's the thing. It's like the pacing of The Empire Strikes Back is just at a breakneck pace. It slows down at the right times. It picks up at the right times. I mean, it really is beyond just the Star Wars film. It's definitely one of the best movies ever made. So, I mean...
Now, is Empire your favorite?
Empire is my favorite.
And you think it's still the best movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, that's an important distinction to make because, I am unbiased enough to recognize, like, sometimes I'll recognize something superior. It might not be my favorite thing. Like, I'll do this all the time with albums from bands. Mm-hmm. Their best album may not necessarily be my favorite one. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a lot of movies. There's a lot of movies where I'll go, okay, this movie is way superior to this other one, but this other one's my favorite, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, so if you would have asked me when I was a kid, I would have said Return of the Jedi would probably have been...
It's the Ewoks, wasn't it?
No. It was just honestly... And it wasn't until I got older and really watched Empire, because for a while I wouldn't watch it. I would watch A New Hope, skip Empire, and then just jump straight to Return of the Jedi. All for the simple fact of that Empire freaked me out as a kid.
Yeah, it was pretty dark.
It was very dark, and it was just like, some of the things, like especially the whole Han torture thing kind of really weirded me out.
Yeah, I mean, when you really stop and think about a lot of things that were in that movie, it was actually a lot darker than...
Yeah. And,
Luke getting beat up by the Wampa.
Yeah, and it was just, of course, the music just didn't make it any better, especially that. And it was creepy, that whole scene with, like, when Vader would be popping out of nowhere, or he would just be tossing stuff at Luke, and he was just getting beat up by, like, random pieces of appliances. And, it was just like microwaves were flying at him. I mean, it was just all kind of crazy stuff. And it really kind of freaked me out as a kid. But as I got older, Empire really became my favorite because of those reasons, because in my own way, I guess I kind of embraced the darkness. But I really did start to appreciate the movie. And of course, Yoda was a big reason for me loving that movie. And I think, honestly, between the two, I think I would have to still say Empire. I have to agree with you and say Empire is still the better movie. But we were talking about the music, and of course I can't wait to see, the orchestra do it, but I really would love to see, for them to do Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Because
that throne room scene with the battle between Vader and Luke, after he says, never, and then he ignites the saber.
Oh yeah,
that choir, that music. Yeah. Oh my!
Oh, that would be amazing to see.
Oh
live.
My God,
that would be right up there with if they ever do the Phantom Menace to see it. Duel of the Fates, which is what the segment is actually named after.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man, that would just be ridiculous.
And that's what I'm just thanking God that John Williams is doing this movie, all the movies, and. I don't know, because Return of the Jedi has some really cool moments. Definitely the evolution of Luke. There's a lot of different, and then Vader, his helmet got like that, military spit shine on the helmet or whatever. I mean, he still was menacing, even in,
especially in the beginning.
Yeah, especially in the beginning.
Like for the first act, I would say he's every bit as menacing as he was in Empire.
And I was really kind of just nervous, like even as a kid watching that scene when he and Luke are on that little wooden bridge and they're just walking, having that little father-son talk, almost like Coming to America. That was kind of
those things. And I brought this up. Yeah, and that's it. Like last week, we talked about Kylo Ren, and we talked about the fact that when he and Rey were discussing stuff, and it was kind of nice to see Kylo in that more pensive, reflective, it's not a series of threats, it's like an actual conversation. I ate that up in Return of the Jedi when it was just Luke and Vader kind of having a conversation.
Yeah.
And it was, it blew my mind then, it blows my mind now.
Yeah, and quite frankly, when Luke is handcuffed and he's standing there with Vader, and his back is to Vader, and then Vader ignites the lightsaber. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, man, he's about to just hack him down, man. And then
Exactly.
But I'm just amazed at how calm Luke was. Like, it didn't freak him out. He just kind of turned around slowly.
Well, I think that's because Luke ultimately knew that Vader was going to be taking him to the Emperor. He wasn't, not to mention the fact that Vader wanted him to join him to fight the Emperor. So, I think Luke knew he was safe.
It was just kind of like, wow, for him to be that calm walking next to Vader.
Yeah.
And then also just the stuff that he was saying to him, it was just kind of like, Luke is at a completely different level here. Like, he's walking, he's like, I know, Father. So you've accepted the truth. And then he's like, well, I accepted the truth that you were once. And like, he was kind of talking back to Vader a little bit, and he wasn't a bit fearless. And he wasn't, fearful at all of Vader. And I'm like, wow. That's gutsy, So I don't know. I have a lot of reasons to love Return of the Jedi, but I think
absolutely,
Empire is still the better movie just because, like you said, I believe the pacing, the cinematography, of course, the writing, the twist, of course, of Luke,
everything.
I am your father.
When you start to even think of a lot of the Lando scenes and everything, and just when you really put that whole movie together, is just.
Yeah, the love scene between Han and Leia.
Yeah, it's just like everything was like really perfectly executed. Yeah. Pretty much. The comedy was the right blend.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of. It was just. It was
could use a good kiss.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff and the. In spite of Lucas's special editions, and I actually like a lot of the stuff that was added to Empire.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it enhanced the stuff, particularly the whole Vader Emperor conversation. And then, of course, actually putting Ian McDiarmid in instead of, I wanted to say Sebastian Shaw.
No,
that's the Vader guy.
Yeah. That's the guy in the Vader suit.
Oh, it's like his name is on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, when they did that, I think that actually really enhanced the movie because not only did they put Ian McDiarmid in there, they actually gave you more dialogue and they extended the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it made a lot more sense and it put a lot of things into context. So I think that's, you're looking it up, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm curious now.
Oh, of course. No, it's like it escapes me.
But, well, I guess we could just go to, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, so with you guys, because a lot of times you guys have commented on this, which is actually part of what influenced us to put this in there, is the fact that I've had conversations, Daryl's had conversations with you guys about, which one of these movies, because it's funny that nobody really puts A New Hope in any of these. It's always Empire versus Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Even though A New Hope basically is the one that started all, it won all the Oscars. I think everybody pretty much gives it its proper due and all the accolades that it deserves. But yeah, we're going to go with Empire Strikes Back, guys.
By the way, the name is Clive Revel.
That's it. Clive Revel. I knew it was like,
Yeah.
Now the mystery is solved.
Yes.
Now we can move on.
He's no longer the Phantom Menace.
No.
All right. So now we can move on to From a Certain Point of View.
From a Certain Point of View.
All right. So we're talking the Rise of Skywalker plot.
Yes. Now, last week we talked about the featurette, which a lot of people are mistakenly call it a trailer. It's not a trailer. But now this week we're going to start to delve in. We actually did address some of this stuff, but now we're going to really be talking about the plot, because obviously I think the actual second trailer is probably going to give us a little bit of plot details. I still don't think it's going to give us a lot, but I think we're going to start to see some of these scenes that we've seen a few times now, like Kylo and Rey fighting on the remnants of the Death Star and things like that. I think we might actually see a little bit of context in this.
Yeah.
So when you're putting this outline together and you selected this, what direction are you trying to go with in this discussion?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that, you sent me the plot, and, I read it and I was just like, wow, okay. Now, I'd like to say first that it's not official.
Yeah, this is somebody claiming on Reddit. What a shock. We all know what Reddit can be. But what makes this source interesting is that apparently this guy was correct or something with some other information, and now he's bringing some stuff about the plot of The Rise of Skywalker through various insider sources this guy claims to have. And what was interesting about, if you actually read through this whole thing, is the fact that he would even say, well, you know what, this is a little bit vague, or this is undetermined because they didn't have the information on it. It wasn't like he was trying to fill in blanks. I mean, when there wasn't any information, he just said there's no information.
Yeah, I just don't know. Right? Yeah.
So that ends a little bit of credence to it and validity to it, but
yeah, I think that after reading some of this stuff, I'm just kind of like, okay, basically they're saying like the movie kind of opens up with Luke and Leia. It's a flashback when they were kind of younger, and when Leia was pregnant with Kylo, or Ben at the time, and he was kind of finishing up some of her training and whatnot because she couldn't continue on because she was with child. So, that kind of moves on. Of course, they're talking about situations of Rey training with Leia. There's a lot of different, I don't know how much, well, I can't really, because the thing is, I don't know if it's really spoilers or what, because we don't know how true it is.
Well, that's the thing. I don't really think you can call it a spoiler, really, because it's not even confirmed. Now, if these were all confirmed details, then they'd be spoilers.
Yeah, so basically, they're just
take this for what you guys,
Yeah, so, they're just talking about a lot of different things about the red eyes, with 3POs, because he was trying to he couldn't decode some sort of Sith dagger. And Kylo was basically on this whole hunt for this thing called the Wayfinder that apparently was owned by Vader. And then that led him to eventually get into the I keep wanting to say the outer realm, but the
unknown regions.
Unknown regions, where he finds Palpatine. And Palpatine is, rumored to be like around 115, 13 years old, decrepit, basically near death or what have you. But he's basically trying to hold on for Kylo and Rey. And he basically tells Kylo that, hey, go get Rey and bring her before me, because basically his whole plan is he wants those two to take over the Empire.
Yep. Some of this stuff we talked about a little bit last week. This week we're just getting into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, and of course he kind of has this whole fleet of Star Destroyers at his disposal. And apparently, even towards the end of the film, I think Kylo and Rey get into a battle, and Rey ends up destroying Kylo. And then there's this whole other scene where, Rey now has to go and deal with Palpatine, but she's not powerful enough to deal with Palpatine. And so the spirits of Luke and Leia both come and assist Rey in vanquishing the Emperor forever. And then it kind of closes out how Star Wars kind of began with Rey. I think she's on Tatooine. She kind of eventually forges. There's some things with the lightsaber too that's really poignant as well, because Luke eventually gives Leia's lightsaber, and then she kind of combines, I think, the stones of Leia and Luke together and kind of makes a yellow bladed lightsaber. And then she kind of buries the rest of the pieces in the sand, and then she's kind of standing on Tatooine looking at the two suns. So that's kind of like a bit of a summary. Of course, I'm leaving out probably like another third of the movie probably, but...
Well, I mean, that was basically, we'll put a link to this in the show notes or whatever. But I mean, there were elements, like I said, that I thought were kind of cool about this whole thing. And then there was stuff that I was a little, it's like I said last week, the whole thing where, okay, Rey is Palpatine's granddaughter, but then it's almost like we get warm and fuzzy Palpatine where he realizes that family is actually more important than anything, and he wants to bond basically with Rey and leave the Empire to Rey and Kylo and stuff. And it's just like I said, it would be intriguing. Like the way, if you guys actually read through this and you read the whole synopsis, it would actually be intriguing to see a lot of this stuff on the screen. But there's certain things that just don't fit with the characters, particularly Palpatine. It just doesn't fit with what we've seen, and I think that that's really important. Again, I mean, characters can grow, they can, expand, they can change, whatever, but it just doesn't seem like this would happen. I mean, let's not forget the last time we saw Palpatine, he was being pitched over the side of like a reactor, and we saw the blue, whatever that was, energy stuff coming up, which you assumed was him just vaporizing, but apparently not.
All right.
And they don't actually, if I remember correctly, did they actually talk about how he survived?
Well, I don't know if they say how he survived. I don't think that might have been like the information that was missing. But basically they said Palpatine had been in the unknown regions for about 30 years, and he was searching for something or other, and he was just kind of like trying to hold out.
Well, and a lot of this jives a little bit with the Aftermath trilogy too.
Yeah,
and even like throughout, because the Thrawn novels, they really point this out in the first one, but it's carried off into the second one. One of the reasons why Thrawn achieves the rank that he achieves is because the Chiss, being in the unknown regions, there's threats to the Empire, there's things like that he knows about and he kind of understands. And Palpatine feels that he can help him in that regard. And Palpatine has this, this whole thing where I think it was in the Aftermath trilogy where he was talking about there was this dark force or something that was calling out to him from the unknown regions. So he started to try to explore stuff, and Jakku is kind of like at the edge. And so that's why he had a little bit of almost like a temple or something there, kind of a fortress. And that's where the Battle of Jakku starts to take place. And so there's all kinds of, hints and various things.
Yeah, because I guess there's there's something that's supposed to be like the Wayfinder, and that's what led Kylo. He was on this hunt for this thing, and then that's what led him to, and it's actually Palpatine in the flesh. It's not
right.
It's actually him. So, but I don't think it really just, talks about how he survived.
Well, the other thing that I look at too when I read this, and when a lot of the supposed leaks that are online, JJ and a lot of the people that are, basically in the know, have all said that the final scene is just going to blow our minds. I don't think that Rey looking at the twin sons jives with that description.
Well, yeah, technically that would be the final scene, but then it could be maybe that whole...
They said the last shot.
Yeah, they did.
Last shot, so like the last frame.
Yeah, that's true.
Would be something that's just going to melt our minds or whatever they said. I mean, honestly, that statement really has me more intrigued than almost anything else. And, that featurette that we were going over last week, with 3PO with the red eyes, and you have Dark Ray and all. It's kind of like, what are we in for with
exactly, this movie? Yeah. It's kind of like we're really going to be taking on a ride on this.
Yeah. I mean, I really get the sense that we might see some things that we haven't seen in Star Wars in a good way.
Yeah,
you could
absolutely.
say that about Last Jedi, too, but...
Yeah.
Overall, it was... And again, I mean, we like The Last Jedi. But I'm ready for more of like a Star Wars adventure. Mm-hmm. I want something that's amazing. Something that gives me the feeling of like what I had when I saw the original trilogy. And that's what it looks like we might actually get from this movie. And that's why I think everybody is speculating so heavily about the plot, because it really does matter. I mean, this is the end of the saga. This isn't even just capping off the trilogy. This is the end of the actual saga.
Yeah, you got to bring it home.
And you got to bring it home, and it's got to do justice to what came before. And I know Lucas even was pretty involved in a lot of this, too.
I would love to see what his thoughts are. Like, if he's looking at this like, man, this is better than what I could have even imagined. Like, if he would have said something like that, then I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too hard, though, if he was going to take in that ultra sciencey.
Oh, yeah, that. But I mean, just saying, like, even looking at his original work, though. Like,
if he was just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus, I remember when we were working, at the school, and there was the one teacher that hosted the talent show at that elementary school, and then there was that one girl that performed, and it was terrible. And she's like, "Well, that was
oh yeah,
very." She was like,
"That was very brave."
Like, that was very brave, or it took a lot of courage. One of those, like, you got to say something positive, but this is really going to be difficult, and that's what you really don't want Lucas to be saying. Because I don't even remember if he made a whole lot of comments about The Last Jedi.
No, not that I can recall.
It was kind of like, I remember he was sort of like dryly complimentary about The Force Awakens, if I remember correctly, too. Like, it was kind of like, it was all right.
Yep. It's cool, I guess.
But I mean, that was when, Disney like practically locked the door and wouldn't even let him around. Now he's actually been visiting the sets of, he's been working with the guys on The Mandalorian a little bit.
Yeah, Benioff and Weiss have been talking to him.
Benioff and Weiss have talked to him. JJ, of course, has actually been consulting him and everything. So I think it's good because, Lucas is a master storyteller, and this is wrapping up the entire saga. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. It's gonna be good though. I really gonna stick my neck out for JJ and to say this is gonna be awesome.
I think so.
Yeah.
I actually
just from what I've seen already.
I'm gonna put it out there right now. I think this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
And I felt that The Last Jedi was gonna be really good, but I didn't feel as strongly as I feel it with this. Especially with JJ at the helm. But what about you guys? I mean, we're leaving this whole synopsis, for you guys in the show notes. Take a look at it. Let us know what your thoughts are at HeadToHeadSW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Really curious on what you guys think about this. Because I'm telling you, the plot that this guy lays out is kind of out there in a lot of ways. But there are a lot of plausible things in it, too. So let us know. But then once you have actually read through this and, your mind has been blown at, like, how many crazy things are in this plot, it's time for you to clear your mind. That's right. You're going to clear your mind, and right now we're going to go through a lot of these questions that we get from our listeners. Some of them are actually pretty challenged to answer, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm. All right. This one is submitted by Bridget Titley. How old do you think Obi-Wan would be in the Kenobi show?
The Kenobi show. It kind of sounds like a late talk show. Yeah.
Some late night. Hello there.
Yeah. Hello there. My next guest is General Grievous. Well, so, I mean, all we have to do is do a little bit of simple math, which at the time that we're recording this, because you guys know we record this on the Fridays, it's actually getting a little late.
It's actually Saturday.
Yeah, it's actually Saturday now, so bear with us. But this takes place 8 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Right. So Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan's probably about, what, 30?
Yeah, because he was 30, like 19 in Phantom Menace.
Probably like around 21,
maybe, and because Attack of the Clones was like 2 years. Yeah. No, 10 years. Because of Anakin.
Yeah.
Anakin was like 9 in Phantom Menace.
So
he's like 19, so that puts Obi-Wan at like 29, 30.
So Revenge of the Sith, he's probably
I think that was a year or two after, maybe.
Yeah, so that's probably
31,
32.
So he's probably like 40.
Yeah.
In the Obi-Wan series then.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like somewhere between 40, 45 if you want to like pad it a little bit.
Yep.
Which is interesting because, you know, Alec Guinness was like 62 or something like that when he did A New Hope. Because I remember Mark Hamill was laughing that he was as old as Alec Guinness when he did The Last Jedi, which just blows my mind.
I know, right?
You know, it's just so crazy to me. But when you actually look at it, Obi-Wan, because let's see, there's like, man, how many years is there between like Sith and A New Hope?
A New Hope?
Yeah. It's like 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 20. So that fits. Because if Obi-Wan is like around 48 years after Sith, 12 years later, I mean, it's a little shy, but he'd be like in his 50s or 60s. So you figure that Obi-Wan's probably supposed to be, in character, he's probably supposed to be around 40, 45.
Mm-hmm.
Which will be interesting because he'll still be young enough that he can
get around and do.
Yeah, he can do some damage, but he's old enough that his wisdom and everything else. And
he's not rushing.
He's not rushing into battle. So it's really going to be interesting. The Obi-Wan series, I mean, obviously I wanted a movie, I wanted the whole thing, but I'm really curious to see how they handle this whole thing. It should be really cool. So make sure you watch it, Richard, and let us know what you think of it in like 2 years from now when it actually airs or whatever it is. All right, who do we got next?
All right, the next one comes from Justin Woodford. Justin asked the question, if Rey is a clone, do you think she would be powerful enough in the Force to fight Palpatine alone, or would she need help from Kylo?
Yeah, well, according to this plot outline that we were talking about, she apparently needs help from the ghosts of
Christmas
Leia.
Past.
And Luke, exactly. Yeah, you know, the argument for it, obviously, is the fact that she has the DNA of, like, the most powerful Force users, so that combined...
She should be good.
Yeah, but...
Just because you have the ability doesn't necessarily mean you know how to wield it.
Well, it's not even just that. I mean, you could make the argument that, look, she's got all the tech, she's been training.
That's true.
All that aside, though, Palpatine... I mean, look, this guy is, like, ultra powerful.
And he's a master manipulator, too.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like how I think that's going to be more so her biggest challenge than anything, more so than the Force abilities, because I think, you know, okay, she's had some training by Luke. She's going to get apparently, quote unquote, training by Leia. Like you said, she has the Jedi text. I'm sure she might be communing with Luke or Yoda or sometime, you know, at some point during this film.
She has probably some workbooks.
Yep, exactly. She got a couple tutorials on YouTube.
Yep.
I think
PDFs.
So I just think that, you know, and like I said, she has these natural abilities that we've already, this raw power. And like even Luke said, it's like, man, I've only seen this type of power like one other person, you know? So it's kind of like she has the ability to do so much. And even in that first trailer, man, I mean, she's like flipping over like a TIE fighter, man.
That's true.
I mean, I don't know if that's a vision or not, but crap, you know? So I think she'll have the ability. It's just now, will she be strong enough emotionally and mentally? Because even in this particular script that they kind of laid out, Kylo says some words to her and she instantly is just like angry. And see, that's the thing. It's like being able to control your emotions and not go down that dark path. That's the key. And will she be able to withstand that temptation? Especially having as much power as she has, and especially if she thinks she gets become, because you hear from Yoda, you heard it from I think it was Yoda. Well, I know it's definitely Yoda, but I'm trying to think if Obi-Wan said it, but yeah, you just basically don't want to become overconfident.
Well, and the other thing you got to look at, too, is, okay, you look at how much more Palpatine is than Snoke. Mm-hmm. And Snoke is pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at Snoke against Last Jedi Rey, Snoke was easily able, she had zero power compared to him.
I mean, he slapped across the forehead with a lightsaber. She's like a rag doll to him. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, she's a little bit more trained and a little bit more powerful in Rise of Skywalker, but how much more powerful the Emperor is than Snoke, I can't help but think it's kind of the same kind of difference. That, yeah, she's pretty powerful, but when she goes up against somebody like Palpatine, it's like... Well, I mean, and that's why we always ask the question, and I really wish that we could have saw. I mean, it was a great moment, but I really wish we could have seen how Luke would have actually fared against the Emperor. Like, would he have won?
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously the old canon, the expanded universe Luke would have... Well, even he had some problems with him, because they actually had him fighting Palpatine's clone or whatever, and it was as powerful as Luke was, even though that was a little bit earlier in the expanded universe. Like the later expanded universe, by the time that, he became like basically a Jedi Grandmaster or whatever. I mean, Luke was so powerful, especially by the Yuuzhan Vong when that started. I mean, he was like a god, basically. Yeah. It was like nobody was more powerful than Luke at that point. But the way that they're handling him in this new canon, though, yeah, that's a little bit different. So it's true.
Like even Last Jedi Luke, like if he would have went up against Palpatine.
Well, you can't really count that because he had rejected the Force. He was kind of out of shape. He was kind of like Rocky IV Apollo. It's
No, but I'm just saying, but the fact that he...
All right, now if you're talking like toward the end of The Last Jedi, Luke...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Then he's like, he got his mojo back.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he has it. He just shut it off. And I think it's just how powerful... Would he, what I'm saying? Like, would he have been powerful enough to defeat the Emperor then? Would he have been able to defeat the Emperor in Return of the Jedi? Because we never really saw it, because he basically just kind of sacrificed himself to kind of push his father, which is kind of funny now that I think about it, because it's almost the same thing as Revenge of the Sith.
Well, kind of. I actually don't necessarily think that he was doing that strictly as a means... Yeah, he wasn't fighting back at first, but I don't think that... I mean, he was at the point where he was going to die if his dad didn't do anything.
Yeah, but I mean, like, why did Luke not fight back to begin with?
Because he wanted to show that he wasn't, like, angry. He wasn't like a Sith, He was just basically like, I'm not going to join you. You're going to have to kill me. I'm not going to turn to the dark side.
Yeah, he could have still.
And so the Emperor was like, all right, cool. You made your choice. Now I'm going to kill you. And it's like, Luke couldn't withstand him. He wasn't powerful enough yet. He wasn't about to block the Force lightning. He probably never even saw that before.
Well, no, he didn't. I mean, but I always wonder if... I've always kind of wondered this. If Luke actually kind of figured what the Emperor would do.
Almost like kind of is he like sort of pulling slight Obi-Wan kind of thing where he's...
Well, like, okay.
sacrificing himself, and it's kind of like, all right, Dad, you have to
choose.
You have to pretty much kick in, and boy, I really hope you choose the latter.
Well, I mean, I kind of look at it from this standpoint. Like, he knows the connection that he feels with his dad. He knows that there's good in him. He's felt it. And he knows that, okay, but he needs something to push him over the edge.
I don't doubt that it probably started out that way. All I'm saying is if Luke decided, like, okay, it's not happening, I guess I'm going to have to defend myself now. He just isn't powerful enough to do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And
Luke later on the other hand, absolutely. It's just like one of the things that I laugh every time people bring this up is like, oh, well, even Rey, if you look at, she was like they were stick fighting basically. But look at how easily she, vanquished Luke or something. And I'm like, well, he wasn't really trying to fight back. I'm like, trust me. If Luke really wanted to, she would have been no match for him. Still isn't a match for him.
No. I mean, just the mere fact that, like, when they're dueling, he's about to fall and hit his head.
Yeah, and he just...
It's just instant. It was like instant. Yeah. It's like he didn't even have to think about it.
Nope. It's like you could just basically tell he was a total master of the Force at this point.
Yeah. Even just doing regular stuff like, that whole thing he did with the stick when he's all catapulting himself across. Like, granted, he wasn't using the Force, but he's still very skilled, just naturally.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You could tell, like, okay, this guy... That's what I thought was so intriguing to me about The Last Jedi was when you saw Yoda and Luke reunite, but this time Luke is a true Jedi master. So there's like the dynamic's kind of the same, but kind of not, because Luke is like ultra powerful in the Force too. So,
well, that's what I love too, is because it's like... It's like, just when you think, like, Lucas is probably like, just when you think you pretty much got it, your master still can come back and teach you some crap, and I kind of love that aspect about it, because, he's laughing at us like, oh, Skywalker. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, I've been watching you for a while, man. And gotta tell you.
And it's like, he probably thought like, well, okay, I got to be better than Yoda now. But now Yoda's completely in the Force now. So it's like, yep, Yoda's still all the way up there and you're still here. So.
Yeah, you got to admit that calling down lightning trick and
hitting with the cane.
It's like, when did Force Ghosts get to be able to do this?
Well, that's what makes me kind of...
Obi-Wan sat on a log, and I thought that was cool.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing with this whole Reddit situation, is that if Leia and Luke come back.
But again, it's like they don't, unless they've said they haven't recast the role of Leia. They're not doing any CGI that they've said.
Right.
So it's like, where are they going to get all this? She did not have all this in unused footage. There's just like no way. Now they're going to say she's going to go up against Palpatine with, like, when was that scene shot for Force Awakens?
Well, they made it just, you can probably cut around that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, all they've done with the Force Awakens that I saw so far, not Force Awakens, but The Rise of Skywalker, where her footage is concerned, is they were able to wipe out backgrounds and put some new ones in and like age her up a little bit. But that's a big step away from animating brand new scenes, which they said they didn't do.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We will. Wow, I think we actually spent more time on that one question than...
Yeah.
All right, well, as always, let us know what you guys thought of the show at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I don't know. Anything else I should mention to everybody? It's kind of like I got nothing at this point.
Oh, definitely pick up that Age of the Resistance comic. That's out.
Yep. That's been out. Still got to read it, but it's been out since last week, I think. So, yep, check that out. Check out some of this other stuff. Definitely check out some of our previous episodes. If you guys are new to our podcast.
Yeah, if you guys hear any news that we haven't covered, or we might miss something. So, definitely let us know.
Yeah, let us know. So hopefully you guys enjoyed everything this week, and, we'll see you guys next week. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.